Hi, my name is Tigz Rice and I'm a photographer, retoucher and digital artist. Over the last couple of years, you may have noticed that your clients' expectations of your workflow has changed, expecting photographers to also be videographers as well. Today, using a range of Wacom products and Adobe Creative Cloud, we'll be showing you how you can incorporate videography into your workflow. Today, I'm working on a project for one of my clients, Vicky Butterfly. Together, we're going to be working on a video which shows a teaser of her new costume for one of her burlesque acts. As I work a lot on the go, I'm going to be using Photoshop Touch, an app which I can use on my iOS devices or also Android. Opening up the software, I can put down my ideas on a canvas. You'll see a number of tools that you may recognise from the normal Photoshop software package. We can add photos. We can also select and deselect. We've got our effects menu in here. And we've also got a number of tools including fill and stroke, gradient and lens flare. I'll probably start with a fill and stroke so that I can have a plain white background to work on. Down the side we also have our brush tool, an effects brush tool. We have a clone and we have a heal tool and we have an eraser. Opening up my brush palette, the first thing I'm going to do is select my size of brush. For sketching I tend to use quite a small brush at 100% hardness and also the colour black. Vicky's already mentioned to me that she's wearing a big hat for the shoot, so this is going to be quite a focal point throughout our video session. Some feathers that are going to hang down, and there is a veil, although I don't know where the veil is going to be. But we can use the hat to obscure the face, particularly the eyes. The idea for this actually comes from a shoot that I've done in the past with another performer. Going into my Creative Cloud, dragging the image down into the bottom corner so that it's not obstructing the image. I can also use my bamboo stylus to get finer detail when dragging my transform tools. Your photo will come in on a new layer just as it would if you were using the desktop version of Photoshop. There is an option in the menu to merge your image or flatten the image if you would prefer to save space. For now I'm going to leave this image so that I can edit it in Photoshop at a later stage if I want to. Clicking on the back button at the top, I can save the project and it will automatically upload to my Creative Cloud. Back in the studio, I can now access all my photos from my iPad on my Creative Cloud site. Within each of my pictures, I have the option to share them either via a private link, public. I have the options to allow comments and also allowed Vicky to download the work. This can either be emailed to her, or if I click on the link, it will give me a link that I can then send to her via another program. I also have the options in here to preserve the layers, so when Vicky views the work at a later date, she can actually toggle on and off the inspiration image that I've put into the image. I also have the option to post my work publicly on Behance if I want to share to a wider audience. Behance is now part of Creative Cloud. Behance then gives me the option to name my file, tag my image, and start any conversation. I can also choose whether to make my project visible to everyone or a certain feedback circle if I only want certain friends to see the artwork. Let's have a look at some of the footage that we shot during the shoot. By pressing the spacebar or the button that I've programmed on my Cintiq, the content will then play for me, or I can use the pen to scroll back and forth between the content to look at it at faster speed. I can see that the beginning part is quite shaky, but towards the middle there's some really nice footage that actually would be a key part of my sequence later on. By pausing this footage, I can go in and I can capture frames if I want to take them and make videos later on, or I can set specific poster frames so that when I come to look at the footage later on, it's much easier to find what I'm looking for. Because I know that I'm going to be using this footage later on in my sequence, I'm going to give it a rating of 3. Anything higher than 3 in my workflow will automatically get exported and later on imported into Premiere Pro. Anything lower than that, 2, 1 or 0, won't probably make it into the film. Let's have a look at another couple of sequences. This one has a really great dynamic shot of the cape opening out and showing the spider's details. So this one I'm going to rate as a 3. This one here has some really lovely detailing of the gold belt, but it's quite a boring shot and there's not much in the composition, so I probably won't use this one. I'm going to give it a rating of 1. Now that I've gone through all my footage, every single piece has a rating. Lightroom has a really great filter system which will allow me to pick out all the ones that I've rated 3 or higher and leave behind all the ones 2 or lower without actually deleting any of the content. Going down to the bottom right, I can click on where it says no filter and change this to rated. A star system will come up. I will set the rating as greater than or equal to and give it a rating of 3. It will now show me all the content that I think is good enough to go into the final sequence. By pressing Control-click on my Mac or right-click of your PC, I can then export the files so that they're ready to use in a temporary folder for Premiere Pro. I've given them a name, Vicky Butterfly, who's my client, and it's going to include the original video format. Press Export, and it's ready to go. When you open your Premiere Pro project for the first time, you'll be greeted with a screen like this. This is the default workspace for Premiere Pro, and I find it works really well for my workflow. In the top left-hand corner, you have your source monitor, where you'll be able to set in and out points on your video, as well as markers. On the right-hand side, you'll be able to view all the content that you've put into your timeline below. And in the bottom left-hand corner is where we're going to import and keep all of our footage. By double-clicking in this section, we can bring up the footage that we saved earlier in a temporary folder. Highlighting these and importing them, they'll take a few seconds and then they will appear in the bin below. Clicking on any of these files will bring up the content in your source monitor, where we can again scroll through the content. Clicking on any of these thumbnails will bring up the footage in the source monitor, where we can start looking in depth into our footage. To make this process a little easier, the Cintiq has a number of buttons that we can program for our shortcuts. Let's go through that now. By clicking on the eye at the top of our Cintiq, we can see what all our preset buttons have been set to. Here you can see we have M, which is for our marker, and on the side here we have I and we have O for our in and out keys. If you wanted to set your own settings, you can come down here into Express Key Preferences, where you can choose your favourite shortcuts and program them into any other buttons that you like. You can see here that we have one set for all applications, but we've also have another set that's been specifically designed for Premiere Pro use. By using the shortcut M, we can leave markers on our timeline, which will help us later on when we're coordinating our video footage with our audio soundtrack. The first marker that I'm going to put down is the start of the music, which comes in a few seconds into the audio clip. By using the precision point of the Cintiq pen, I'll scrub along the timeline until I hear the first beats of the music come in. Pressing M, this will then leave a small arrow at the top of the timeline, which will be useful when we put in the first sequence later on. Subsequent markers will also show where the music changes, perhaps in tempo or in beat. As you can see from the timeline, I've also included another couple of markers later on in the track. As I play back the track, have a listen to where the markers fall within the music. I also know that my client only wants her video to be about 1 minute in length. Using the tools down the side of the timeline, I'm going to pick the razor tool, which will allow me to splice the music into 2 parts. Using the razor tool that can be found in the toolbar on the left of the timeline, I'm going to click on this icon and scroll over to just after 1 minute, where I'm going to slice the track. As you can see by doing this, I've now created 2 separate audio files. By going back to my selection tool, I can take the part that I no longer need, right-click on that and clear that from the timeline. Now that we've got some markers in place, I can start putting some of my video files onto my timeline. Double-click on any of the content in your bin to bring it up in the source monitor. We can start adding in and out points to our sequences. Using the spacebar shortcut that we set up previously in our preferences will allow us to scroll through and preview the content within this particular video. The beginning of this sequence is very dramatic, and I definitely want to use it within my sequence. By pausing the content, going back to the beginning, I can use my I and O shortcuts to set in points and out points on the sequence so that I can then import it easily into my timeline. Once your in and out markers have been set, we can click and drag the content down to our timeline where we can line it up with one of our markers. As you can see, it clicks and locks to the markers that we have in place, but the content hasn't quite been enough to reach the next marker. By hovering over the edge of that particular sequence, a small red icon will come up which will allow you to extend that content out to reach the next marker. As you can see from our timeline, the video has also got some audio footage attached which was taken at the time of filming. In this particular case, the audio footage is of no use to us, so by right-clicking on the content, we can unlink that from the video, and if we right-click again, can clear that from our timeline. As you can see, the raising of the arms is a really dramatic movement, which would be even more enhanced if it fell directly onto the beat. By using the slip tool, which you can find again in the left-hand side of the toolbar on the timeline, we can click on that track and we can drag it just slightly left and slightly right to change the in and out point on the track. Have a look at what a difference this has made to our timeline. There are other features that we can also apply to our timeline, which can be found in the sub-menu, found by pressing right-click. On here, we have the option to change the speed and the duration of our track. I've been working on my timeline now for a couple of hours. Let's see how we've done so far. As I've been working on the footage, I've noticed that the colour balance of my footage is just slightly off. We can correct this non-destructively by adding an adjustment layer, which can be found down in your bin. Click on the New Item tab and go up to Adjustment Layer, which will bring up this dialog box. We can just press OK. Dragging this into our timeline, we can line it up with the beginning of our video sequence, and using the Extender tool, extend this all the way to the end of our film. Clicking on the Effects tab down in our bin, we can drag a colour balance effect onto our adjustment layer, which will allow us to change the channels non-destructively. By dragging the red balance, I can give my footage a bit more of a blue tinge, which will fit in with the darkness of her costume. If you have some free time, it's worth exploring the effects palette, as there's lots of other options in there, including noise, adding dust and speckle, and also changing the clarity of the image. By adding an adjustment layer to your timeline, you may have noticed a thin red line has formed just above it. By going up to Sequence and rendering your entire work area, it will render everything that's in your sequence, and it should turn green afterwards. You'll notice now the timeline has gone green that it will run much smoother, and you'll be able to watch your footage back at better quality. The final step in our project is to add credits to the beginning and the end of our sequence. If you go up to your main menu, click Title, New Title, and Default Still, this dialog box will come up, which will allow you to name your still. Click OK once you're ready, and if you go into the Type tool, you'll be able to create a boundary box where you can type in the words that you need for your still. This still will be our opening credit, so I'm going to put Vicky's name into the still. By highlighting the text, I can centre that so it's in the middle of the frame, and I'm just going to drag this box down so it's into the centre. Once you're done, just press on the red X in the corner. This still will then appear in your bin, which can be dragged and dropped onto the timeline where you wish. This still can be extended to meet the rest of the footage, and I'm also going to create one at the end which will have my studio's details and ways of contacting me for future work. Putting your website details at the end of your footage is a great way for people to contact you if they like your work. Once your final credit is in place, your video is ready to export. Once your movie is finished, come up to File, Export, Media, which will bring up this dialog box. Premiere Pro will give you plenty of options for exporting your movie, including QuickTime, MPEG-4, and plenty of other formats in there as well. In this particular case, I'm going to choose Match Sequence Settings, which will correspond with the 1080 HD that we set up at the very beginning of the project. I'm now going to name my movie, and save that in a location that I can find easily later on. Premiere Pro gives me two options for exporting my movie. Export will publish immediately, but it means I can't do any more work while it's running. Queue, on the other hand, will allow me to bring up Adobe Media Encoder, which will allow me to do my editing whilst everything else is running in the background. Your video will automatically pop up in the dialog box, and all you have to do is press the green Go button in the right-hand corner. Hope you found this tutorial useful today. If you have any more questions about Premiere Pro, please feel free to check out Adobe TV or click on any of the links on the following clip. Thank you and goodbye.